The camel and the combustion engine portray the past and the present in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. For centuries, the camel has been a means of transport, a beast of burden, a sustainer of life, and a symbol of wealth. Farmers still comprise a quarter of the workforce, but until the last decade, agricultural output was increasing by no more than 5% a year. Water holds the key to progress. Even as recently as 1976, the average farm size was less than 7 hectares. The Saudis are a proud people, proud of their land, their flocks, their heritage, in a country which covers 900,000 square miles, or more than 1.5% of the world landmass. The flame of progress has been fanned by vast resources of oil, and the economic situation has been transformed as in no other country in the world. It was against a background of an economic explosion in a vast country with a harsh climate that the brothers Alastair and Paddy McGuckian made the beginnings of their move from the lush pasturelands of County Antrim to the solitude of a barren desert.
We needed something like Saudi Arabia in Masstock. We set up a company called Masstock Systems. It was set up to develop agriculture in new situations, new farms, or even new countries. We tried other countries, tried Eastern Europe before then. And just at that time, after the oil hike, Saudi Arabia was ready to start an agricultural industry.
But when you arrived in 1976, you went out into the remoteness of the desert. Now, the problems of establishing farming must have been enormous.
The countryside then, the only growth that you would find, or the only farming, was mostly in small plots and little flooded plots carried out near the oasis, generally speaking. Here and there were some developments taking place, and there were certain indications by anyone who'd been doing any experimental work, and some was already there, that the potential was very, very big. It was a matter really of finding the water, matching it with the soil, and of course with the sunshine, which never ends here. The potential output was very, very high. We, of course, in our temperate climate think that it's all made for us. But in fact, because the temperatures are so much higher here and there's so much more energy, we can produce 5 times as much dry matter from 1 hectare in Saudi Arabia than we do we can in the UK or in Ireland. It was just a matter of trailing caravans out across miles of desert, about 7 hours away from the nearest shops, where there was no water, no air conditioning. These were provided very sort of temporary arrangements, and I think most people didn't expect to get a shower until the end of their stay, 3 months or something like that, until the end of their stint out there. And at that time, it was a case of trying some plots, start to grow some crops to see how the thing would go, and making do in a very, very Heath Robinson way to begin with, until we got the water and until we got the buildings, until everything started to come together. And that we did, of course, over and over again on a number of projects, starting from one and going from one to the other.
The challenge was and still is to make the desert bloom. It may sound comparatively easy. It was far from it. There were many times when the whole project assumed the dimensions of a nightmare, but the confidence was eventually justified. It worked. Today, the company has 8,000 dairy cows on 7 farms. The ventures are all in partnership with Saudi landowners. Out of the inhospitable face of the desert, 100,000 litres of milk are being produced every day. The cows themselves came from the United States and Australia to the relentless heat of the Saudi sun. The landscape tells its own story. Every nut and screw, every washer and bolt had to be shipped in. Herd management under these conditions is a constant challenge. Even those who have made it all happen, with cows averaging up to 7,500 litres in a lactation, did not believe it possible.
No, Johnny, I couldn't even comprehend it at that time. It was only till you actually come out here and get involved in the whole situation and with dairy cows here that you know that it is possible.
What about the problems here that you wouldn't have at home? Problems like stress from the heat?
Well, that is the biggest problem I think all dairy farms out here have to contend with. It is a very big problem because it affects both production and fertility of the cows. And we try to ease it a little bit in the summer times by spraying the cows with water to try to bring down the body temperature, so it gives the cows a little reprieve anyway. Of course, they do get a little more reprieve during the night time when temperatures do tend to drop.
And what about the performance? How does that compare with cows at home?
Oh, very well. We can get, in first lactation animals, we can get 5,000 kilograms per lactation. Going on up after that, 6,500 without too much trouble anyway. We do feed a lot of concentrates, of course, here because they are subsidised, so that is the main food input is concentrates and forage being fed mainly as a roughage.
The cattle do not go out to grass, the forage comes to them. This farm, covering an area of 640 hectares, has been in operation since December 1981. There are 820 milkers and 500 young stock. The farm staff totals 45, half of them from the British Isles. The climate is tough on cattle and on men. It's a far cry from the kindly influence of the Gulf Stream, so it's understandable that in the early days at least, homesickness can be a problem.
I'd say in general you could say yes, for the first couple of weeks to get to know the people working on the farm and to get to know the actual job they're doing. And usually after that, they settle down. And okay, they're very glad to get away on the first holiday because I think they look forward to that more than anything else when they come out here first.
You're now, of course, thinking about going back home. What sort of readjustment will that be? Will that be an even more difficult decision than coming to Saudi in the first place?
I think without a doubt, after spending practically nearly 8 years here now, I know by going home on holidays, I can see the difference, the changes that's taking place back home, and I know I'm going to have a fair problem, I think.
Hugely, it's been a tremendous challenge and there's been a great deal of job satisfaction.
Well, I think I wouldn't be here this long if I didn't get that out of it. Regardless of financial reward, I think it took that to keep me here and to keep me interested in what I was doing out here.
Were you on to read about the stuff I'll need for the end of the month?
No, not yet, Barry. No.
With a huge dairy herd and a big wheat project, the farm employs its own accountant. It's easy to forget that it's in the middle of the desert, that 5 years ago there was nothing.
Nothing else, no?
No.
Okay, fair enough, we'll get that done.
Good morning.
Hey, morning,
Today?
Got the papers this morning.
They're all okay, except course number 8 and number 10, and water level still dropping on them.
Is it? So we better get those pipes down.
Better check with them, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, we get onto the radio now, and it's due to come on now, so we'll see what he has with us this morning. The other things I have from is the Proveni, concentrates, the balance and the grain silos,
Right.
and then a few things the porridge needs. Hello, Alpha, Riyadh, Abdurrahim, do you read me over?
The radio communication is a stark reminder of the remoteness of the place. It's the only contact with the outside world. The job requires both dedication and commitment. The early challenge was not only to conquer the desert, but to motivate staff.
Well, I think within our company, we have particularly strong team spirit, and it is something which has been with us even before then and since then. But I think that there is something special about pioneering. There's something attractive about going out into a completely novel situation and undertaking savage, rough conditions, which is inclined to get the best out of people. I actually feel that there's something in the Celtic character which particularly likes this sort of thing. I think that certainly if you go through the history of the making of the British Empire, you'll find a lot of Celtic blood out in the front lines, and I think it's the same thing. It's just the harder it is, the bigger the challenge, I think the more people are motivated.
The story of the progress of agriculture in Saudi Arabia is capsulated in 2 words: finance and water. The water has always been there, far below the surface of the desert. Oil and government have provided the financial resources to exploit the potential. It was the challenge of milk production which attracted the company in the first instance. Wheat production came later, but has come with remarkable success. If their 1984 crop were planted 500 meters wide on either side of a road, it would stretch for 100 miles. You're going home tonight on holiday, but you're not really going on holiday, are you?
No, not really. I'm home to get involved again in the scene at home. The sheep there now due to start lambing at home, so get my hand back in again, as it were.
So you'll be away for 4 weeks, but in those 4 weeks you'd like to be working on the home farm.
Oh yes, indeed, very much so, because my intention is to go home and take over after I finish here. There's the one good thing about Saudi. It's a good place for accumulating a lot of capital, especially if you're going back home again and wants to reinvest it.
You've been here 3 years. How much longer do you plan to stay?
I would like to stay another 1.5 years if possible.
To reach this area of wheat involves a somewhat hair-raising drive across the desert, but emphasizes the achievement. Bob, I think I'm right in saying this is the first time in the kingdom that grain has been grown on pure sand.
Yes, this is true, John. This project started in the autumn of 1982, and there were a lot of people, even the locals in this area, were very sceptical that the project would actually work.
Now, obviously, first of all, you had to establish that there was a reasonable supply of water.
Yes, well, most of this area, in fact, most of the land in Saudi has been surveyed by the Ministry of Agriculture and Water, and there is quite a lot of information available to us, so we have quite a good idea about the water supply in the area before we even begin.
Did you have to do anything special by way of preparation of the land, other than levelling, to get the first crop established?
Well, as this is pure sand, we had to add most of the nutrients that the plant would require. So that meant we added the phosphates, the nitrogen, the potash, and trace elements. Other than that, the water and aphicide as the total ingredients.
So this is your second year. How did the yields go in year 1?
In year 1, because we had quite a bit of land preparation to do, some of the pivots were slightly late in being sown, but we averaged out about 4.5 to 5 tons per hectare. This year, I think that we'll probably get around maybe 6 tons on average. It'll be much better than last year.
Staff on the farms nowadays live in conditions which provide most of the comforts and conveniences of home. The pioneers lived in caravans with no electricity, no running water, no means of communication. Now, of course, children are growing up with all the comforts, but parents have areas of concern. The nearest hospital is 1.5 hours away. Attending school is a physical impossibility due to the remoteness. But the closely knit farm communities have much to offer.
Tom. How'd you get on today?
Oh, very well indeed. It's been a most interesting day. Bob's been showing me around the place, and it's amazing how successful that sand project is, you know. Bob, how many men do you have on there?
We have 10 men there at the moment, 4 Filipinos and 6 expats.
And what's the area altogether?
About 440 hectares at
So
present.
it's quite a big operation,
It
isn't
is.
it? It certainly is. Well, Dorothy, I'd like to ask you about your impressions of life in the kingdom. You've all the home comforts nowadays, of course, but it wasn't always like that when you came to the kingdom, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was very different 6 years ago. I think my initial shock was the heat. 9 o'clock in the morning, getting off the plane, was so hot, and it was very bright. And also, of course, there was only one supermarket to shop at then. Now there are about, maybe 50 or more good supermarkets, department stores and so on in Riyadh.
And of course, at that time, the farm projects were very much at the developmental stage. So what was the accommodation like?
Well, the accommodation I went to was just really finished a day or two before I arrived. So Bob was buying bits and pieces when he was picking me up at the airport. And it was mainly a matter of getting everything put together. The house itself was pretty, well, basic, I suppose. Nothing fitted. And the sand came in. Of course, this accommodation is much different. It's very dustproof, so there's no problem.
In those early days, was there ever a time when you really wished you were back home again?
Oh, often. Yes, I think it took me about 6 months or so really to get settled in. And I think perhaps some of the Saudi ladies made my stay here in the beginning, and certainly still, a lot easier.
Did you find that you were well accepted?
Oh, very well. They were very welcoming and invited me to go places with them. And I was also very pleased to see them when they came to visit me, because after all, I was the only one on the farm at that time. So it was a treat to have some more female company.
The farm at Judah is owned by Mohammed Al-Damar. He is proud of what has been achieved and is quick to commend the expertise of his partners in Masstock. The McGuckian brothers had the plan, the vision and the courage, but it's the people on the ground who have made it work.
It is, because in fact, you know, there is no great grand design. There's no great plan. We make blunder after blunder in the beginning. You know, even our approach to the job, we're quite arrogant about what we could do here, and we found, in fact, there are a lot of things wrong with that. We solve one problem after the other, really, and make one mistake after the other. When, or I suppose I should say if, but we really intend, when we undertake the same type of operation somewhere else, we will make mistakes again. I think a lot of them won't make the same mistakes again, but certainly there's no question about it that it is the personal involvement, and it's the flexibility and the adaptability and the fact that people are prepared, really, no matter how difficult it is, to see their way through to the other side that makes the thing work.
The desert of Saudi Arabia has assumed a new dimension. Agriculturalists from every part of the Western world have become involved, and thus inspired, the Saudis are developing their own enterprises. The expanse of the desert was the traditional base, but that is changing. Intensive sheep management is a comparative newcomer, but already it is emphasizing the tremendous potential of the kingdom in food production. The development at Judah Farm has had an effect on intensification in this area. Now, these sheep have roamed the desert for generations. Now they're being intensified. They're in a feedlot, being fed a diet of grain, and of course, with their ability to thrive under adverse desert conditions, they perform very well under intensive management. Market day in Riyadh, still full of colour, noise, bargaining and tradition. Here, technology has changed nothing in the business of buying and selling. The National Agricultural Development Company is publicly owned, with government holding 20% of the shares. It covers an area of 5,700 hectares, over 14,000 acres, and the aim is to develop modern methods of livestock and crop production. It's a vast project by any standards.
We have around 200 people in the project, but not all of them work in the farm. Just 46 or 45 work in the farm, but the other work in other departments like sheep unit, cow unit, power plant, and the other department like maintenance, like workshop, store.
What about the crops that you grow on the arable side?
We grow this year wheat, and that's 2,700 hectares. And we have also alfalfa as a forage. And the area that we cultivate from alfalfa, it's 805 hectares.
Alfalfa is one of the most successful forage crops in the Saudi climate. In this case, it's being made into hay for feeding to the sheep and dairy cows. This is an experimental farm, and yet with it being very largely public owned, you've got to show a profit, really, haven't you?
Yes, it's not, no, it's not experimental. The experimental just small area for the forage and for wheat, to know what's the best kind of wheat or with different treatment. But the original purpose for this to gain profit.
So the main emphasis really is on commercial farming.
Yes, that's right.
Work has just started on a site for a new dairy unit. The plan is for a complex which will resemble a factory more than a farm. The building program will take 18 months to complete and will provide accommodation for 2,000 dairy cows, plus of course the young stock. This is typical of the program of expansion which has seen the kingdom achieve self-sufficiency in wheat and almost so in dairy products in a period of 8 years. I've heard it said that a farmer seldom makes a good gardener. Yet for the project manager at Harrod, the garden is his hobby. Hewn out of the desert, it brings a rare and vivid splash of colour to a landscape which, apart from the green of the growing crops, is often monotonous in its lack of contrast. He's as pleased to welcome visitors to the garden as to the farm.
خصص الجزء الثاني للعوائل اللي ساكنين هنا. العوائل اللي ساكنين هنا طبعا اللي في المشروع. وممكن الضيوف اللي بيجونا من برا برضه ممكن يستفيدوا منها.
The project is impressive in size and in its aims for the future. A future in which increased national production is the keynote. If the garden at Harrod is an oasis, the town of Fufuf is the focal point of the most important oasis in the kingdom. The area around Fufuf is called Hassa, the murmuring of streams. It has been a rich basin of production for generations, and also, of course, provides a recreational facility rare in a desert land. Favoured by life-giving water, the region is indeed an ancient settlement. And down through the years, the natural resources have been harnessed to good effect. A copious supply of underground water is now supplemented by desalinization plants, and water leaves this spring alone at the rate of 2 million gallons a minute. The water travels by the traditional method of channels and brings fertility to a wide area. Even deep in the hinterland, tribesmen dress better and enjoy a much higher standard of living than their forefathers. The date palm, the emblem of the kingdom, thrives in the water-favored area served by the Hufuf oasis. Saudi Arabia has no forests. The well-tended palm groves provide the most dense vegetation. Climbing a palm tree is an art long since perfected and an essential part of the husbandry program. Well-hardened feet are an essential attribute too. The oasis towns were historically supported by a date palm economy and tribal markets. Dates were the staple food, and other plants like vegetables and alfalfa were cultivated in their shade. Hand pollination is vital in ensuring next year's harvest. A head for heights, a necessity. Todia is another of the farms in which Masstock are partners. Here again, the enterprise revolves around milk production from a herd of almost 1,000 cows. Milking on all the farms is done on the basis of shift work, and in most cases, with 3 times a day milking, the parlour is in operation for 16 hours out of the 24. Financially, milk production is highly attractive. The fixed government retail price is 5 reals a litre. At present exchange rates, that's nearly 60 pence a pint. All the milk produced on the farms is processed and sold by the marketing arm of the company. As in the United Kingdom, low-fat milk is growing in popularity, and the Masstock farms provide the only fresh cream available in the kingdom. There are 850 employees representing 17 nationalities. The value of their output would, it's claimed, represent 7,000 British industrial workers. With milk prices as they are, wheat yields up to 10 tonnes per hectare and about £800 a tonne, turnover is certainly high. The limiting factor in milk production is the stress imposed on the cows by the extreme heat of the Saudi summer, when temperatures often exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite the climatic conditions, overall performance is highly respectable even in an idyllic situation and in the best company. It's all a far cry from those early caravan days in the desert only 8 years ago. The agricultural achievements represent a modern miracle. Nightlife, as we know it, even in Riyadh, is conspicuous by its absence. With little social opportunity to spend, generous tax-free salaries mean money in the bank, or for the farm lads, more acres at home. Of course, you can always buy gold or throw darts.
75, 85, 85.
Sorry, can't lose a lot of
Despite the comfortable quarters, good food and working conditions, Saudi Arabia is no picnic down on the farm.
Greece.
I think I'll go with
14th of June, you coming?
Aye.
Change of money.
I did, what rate do you get?
5.07.
5.27.
With no telephones on many of the farms, letters are the only contact with home. It's a case of living and working cheek by jowl, day and night for months on end. So what is it that attracts people to an environment and a culture so far removed from their roots, so different to their normal way of life?
And I think we're all intrigued as what is out here in Saudi Arabia, and very few people actually appreciate what it is like out here. So I suppose, like a lot of other people, I wanted to travel and see the world. So Masstock gave me the opportunity to come and see a part of this world. And it's very, very different, I think, from what people imagine.
How long have you been here now?
I've been here 9 months now.
It's quite a change from Sligo, though, isn't it?
Oh, yes, quite a change.
Sean, you're from County Antrim. I noticed you were reading one of the farming papers from home. How long have you been here?
2 years and 3 months.
How do you find life here, really?
Very good. The heat's hard to put up with at times, but it's not too bad.
What was it like when you first came? Did you have great problems adjusting to the heat? Now, you're outdoors all the time on the crop side.
Yes, I hadn't too much trouble adjusting because I came in the winter time and it was fairly cool. So by the time the summer came, I was really well adjusted to it.
Finn, you're from County Meath. What were you doing before you came to Saudi Arabia?
I was working on a farm there before I came. I was driving a truck before that. A few different jobs before I came out here.
Tell me about your working day on the farm. Where livestock is concerned, of course, there's a lot of shift work. Does that apply where the crops are concerned too?
Well, it does during the sowing and the harvest when we're preparing the ground. The big tractors work 24 hours a day, and then during the harvest, well, maybe 18 hours or so. The combines run about 18 hours a day.
So what might your typical day be like then at harvest or at planting time?
Well, maybe 6:30 in the morning till 7 o'clock in the evening, depending on what job you're on. If you're drilling or that, you just through the hours of brightness.
Frank, you're another County Antrim man. I'm told you're something of a father figure around the place. When did you arrive here?
It was in August 81.
So in fact, you've seen this particular development right from the ground up,
from the
as
start,
it were. Must give you a lot of satisfaction to be in on a project like this right from the beginning.
No, it does, surely, aye. There's a lot to do now.
You find that when you came out, it was high summer. You must have found that the adjustment to the heat and the conditions took a lot of getting.
Oh, it was hard to get on to at the start. Very hot. It was just right. The summer was almost started. Just all this time.
Does it bother you a lot now, the heat?
Oh, it does at times there, but you just punish on. There's not much you can do about it.
Can you honestly say that you enjoy life here, or do you tolerate it because of the financial inducement?
Well, not really. Well, part of it is, no matter where you live in the world, there's going to be advantages, disadvantages. This place has disadvantages, yes, but there is the advantages as well. Like, you get to know a lot of people out here, make a lot of new friends, and as well as that, there's the money.
Those who work and play on the farms in Saudi have travelled a long way. But the industry, in an unlikely situation, has come a long way too. The transformation in the space of a few short years is quite remarkable, the classic example of rags to riches.
It is unbelievable. I mean, I could never have dreamed that in that time so much would have happened. Not only actually in financial support, but you know, the establishment of standards and the services that are being introduced, some of them commercially and advisory services. The whole putting together of an industry has been a remarkable achievement. I mean, even the handling of the volumes of product that start to emerge from the industry and the movement of materials into the industry, all of that is a very, very big change. And of course, as I said earlier, it applied in so many infrastructural things within the kingdom, in other areas as well as in agriculture. But in being in agriculture, it's really has been very exciting to see how much they've achieved.
These cows are part of the biggest dairy project in the world. 7,000 milkers, a total of 14,000 animals on one farm. Not only that, the Saudi Arabian Agriculture and Dairy Company, SADCO for short, grow all their own feed on 2,000 hectares apart from high-protein concentrates and process all the milk produced. It's an immense operation involving a workforce of 570. But in the livestock world, big is not necessarily beautiful. So many dairy cattle on one farm can bring management and disease problems, especially in the relentless heat of summer.
The biggest problem I think we are facing in the project on the milk production side is the feeding of the animal under extreme heat stress. In the period of June up to September, when temperatures reach over 50 degrees here, animals tend not to eat, and that demands an enormous concentration of nutritional value within the ration you're supplying. And we know far too little about that still. You see, there's only one area in the world comparable to the climatic conditions here is Arizona, and also there the dairy industry is very young.
Stockmanship is obviously very important on a project of this scale and size. Where are your stockmen coming from in the main?
Now, most of the people working in the herds department are from the UK. But I have got at the moment the impression that it would probably be wise to bring in some expertise from Arizona on the herd management level, because we could utilize some of the experience and some of the solutions which they have found over there already in solving some of the problems we are facing.
You must find the whole thing a tremendous challenge, running what is the biggest project of its kind in the world.
Yeah, but the biggest is not so important. What's far more important to me is the best.
The camel is part of history. A single Bedouin family could manage 40 to 50 head, but could survive on 15. Now the first feedlot operation has been established. Nomadic man is adapting to change. The camel must change too. Camels are valuable for their meat and for their milk. They're even more valuable if they've got racing potential. Camel racing is a major sport. The outbuildings and gardens at the country palace of His Highness Prince Sultan bin Mohammed bin Saud Al Kabir, the Saudi partner in the Masstock Company, and a man with a great interest in the development of agriculture. The environs of the palace are certainly impressive, as is the progress in the production of food.
Actually, we are very impressed too. We live with the development here, but we are very impressed with the how it's quick and how it's strong and how it's fast, the agricultural development in Saudi Arabia. In many respects, you see that wheat or vegetable or milk product, and most of this section only just 8 years ago or 10 years, this development started, and very strong and very successful. And this is due to the policy and the support from our government, of course, by the leadership of our King, His Majesty King Fahad, and his Crown Prince, Prince Abdullah, and by the supervision and support and hard work from His Excellency Dr. Abdurrahman al-Sheikh, the Minister of Agriculture, who gave all his time and support and all the effort to give the best for the agriculture development. And here we are now. Wheat, concerning wheat, we are self-sufficient or a little bit more. Milk product, we are close to be self-sufficient, and in vegetable. And we hope in the next 2 or 3 years we'll have self-sufficient in another agriculture product.
When did you become involved with Masstock?
I think with Masstock since 5 or 6 years ago. I've been involved with Masstock first on milk product. We established with Masstock 3 joint venture companies, Masstock Al-Kharj and Masstock Birk and Masstock Todhiya.
3 separate farms?
3 separate farms, which is a joint venture between myself and between my father and between my brother and Masstock. It was only in milk product, and we've been very successful in the trade name of Almarai, which is well known now in Saudi Arabia.
That's the marketing side.
It is the marketing side, and the trademark is Almarai. But all the Almarai farm, it's run and managed by Masstock. It was Masstock International, and become Masstock Saudi Arabia, we established Irish Saudi company joint venture here called Masstock Saudi Arabia, and all Almarai farm, it's run and managed by Masstock Saudi Arabia Limited. And now we start on the wheat, and we have a very successful business in the wheat section.
The milk produced on the Masstock farms is processed in this factory, only completed at the end of 1983. 80% of the output is sold as laban, a cultured product rather like liquid yogurt, and a long-time favourite with the Saudis, until recently, of course, produced from camel's milk. The company introduced fresh milk to the kingdom, and it's been a huge success. The marketing division has a name with Irish connotations, Almarai, green pastures. The marketing side is big business in its own right. From the beginning, it was realised that production and marketing must go hand in hand, especially in a country where fresh milk was unknown. Nowadays, not only do they sell the production of the Masstock farms, they import a wide range of food products too. The growth of the marketing division is a story on its own.
It is indeed. In fact, as little as 6 years ago when we started with just milk and laban, and again, to put that into perspective, it was about 7,000 litres a day back in 1979. Today it's of the order of 100,000 litres a day, which is a distribution problem in itself. Added to that now, we have a very wide range of butters, cheeses, drinks, fresh chilled meat. Now, of these, the butter, in fact, comes from mainly from Northern Ireland, the cheeses from both the north and the south, and some, indeed, from the UK mainland. The meat comes from the south of Ireland. Drinks come from our own factories. Very shortly, in fact, we'll be bringing biscuits to the kingdom for the first time. And very recently, also, a new range of jams. So from essentially a milk distribution company, we are now very much involved in food marketeering and distribution throughout the kingdom.
You're selling on a quality image. You're certainly not trying to be the cheapest on the market. In fact, quite the opposite is often true.
That is true. We have maintained this as a very definite policy in our marketing, that we would not trade in the souks or in the down market areas, that we would bring to the people of Saudi Arabia quality product, either from within the kingdom, where we could, or from outside the kingdom, if that was what was required. The premium price must be paid, of course, because of the cost of distribution. It's an enormous country, and the population is very, very widely spread. And we have a very, very large fleet. I suppose by home standards, it would be considered almost a challenge to the national transport system for the distribution of our products throughout the kingdom.
So it's all quite a challenge, isn't it?
It is indeed, and one that I've very much enjoyed for the last couple of years, and indeed look forward to continuing.
The partnership of Prince Sultan and Alastair McGuckian has been a considerable force in the agrarian explosion in the kingdom. They're not only business partners, they've become firm friends. Under their guidance, the company has made an indelible mark both in production and marketing. Expansion is the keynote, and other developments are under active consideration.
With milk.
At the palace, we were guests of the prince at a typical Saudi meal. They are a hospitable and courteous people, fiercely proud of their heritage, and deeply conscious of the misunderstanding which can accompany newfound wealth. Win their confidence, and every door is open.
There's much difference in the taste between camel
Isn't there?
And cow's milk.
I like the laban. It's very nice.
Very good.
Especially in the summertime.
Yes.
Very,
Yes,
very
people like
refreshing.
laban in summer more than milk.
Yes,
Due to the
more
local
refreshing
climate.
than milk, really.
Actually, I don't like milk at all, but I've got to like laban.
The laban, of course, is quite traditional, Your Highness.
You are involved in milk business and you don't drink milk.
That's right.
I will tell you frankly that our experience with Masstock, it is really very successful experience, and we are very happy to deal and have business with Irish people. They are really ideal for many respects. Fair, straight, very hard worker. They know what they are doing. in general, I think they are very successful people in agriculture field, and we are very happy to have them our partner here in Saudi Arabia.
Where does your company go from here?
Well, we certainly would like to continue to play a role in the development of agriculture within Saudi Arabia. In our own particular activities in Saudi, we see great room for improving the productivity and the efficiency of the various factors and resources which we're using at the present time. As you know, they are, by any standards in the world, they are high right now. But I think that because of the way the industry has been supported and backed by the government, it's possible to make breakthroughs in arid farming, in developing new techniques and new technology.
How do you see the future, Your Highness?
I think I'm looking for a good future. I'm expecting a good future. As I told you before, because the policy of our government is very clear and take a decision strongly to support the agriculture field. And we are not worried at all that the policy for the agriculture in future will be good, and we are expecting a very good future for the agriculture in Saudi Arabia.
The call to prayer. This story has revolved around the call and challenge of the desert, where modern technology and water, hundreds of meters beneath the ground, is being harnessed to such good effect. Do you see the answer to the tremendous problem of world hunger in transferring technology rather than transferring resources?
Yes, in fact, I think you know, the immediate and simple answer one thinks is to transfer food, but in fact it's not an answer at all. And it's essential, I think, for people in the developed world, in Europe, the United States and elsewhere, to recognize that the only chance for the people in areas where there is hunger is to give them the chance to use their own land and their own water and their own hands to produce their own food. And that primary industry of agriculture is an essential starting point for development of any economy in any country. So I think that it is the actual methodology. There's, I think, a bigger and more important world market for the methods of producing food than there is for food itself.
The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. For in the wilderness shall waters break out, and streams in the desert.